Hello and welcome to the Action Network podcast, UFC betting preview presented by DraftKings. I'm your host, Sean Zerillo, joined today by Billy Ward to help look at the UFC 325 card, give you our best bets, favorite props, top underdogs, and more. And if you'd like to tell some of the bets that we discuss on today's show, make sure to find the quick slip link both in the podcast and video description or visit actionnetwork.com/bet now. 13 fight card from Sydney, Australia, the Kudos Bank Arena. 5 p.m. prelims, maybe 5:30 now that we've had a cancellation. 9 p.m. pay-per-view East Coast time. Before we get into the card itself, just want to discuss with Billy some differences because we do discuss a lot of live betting on this show. The differences in the Paramount Plus era compared to the Fight Pass or ESPN Plus era of UFC. Definitely a noticeable delay in terms of the feed. And in betting markets, there's probably like a 30 to even 40-second delay from what you're seeing on the screen relative to what is actually happening IRL. And as a result, it has shrunk the already very minimal time horizon we have between rounds to fire and live bets. There's, previously that 1 minute buffer you have while the fighters are talking to their respective corners before they come back out. Now, if you're watching live odds as you're watching the fight, you're seeing to start them adjust a little bit more aggressively with what you're viewing as 30 seconds left in the round. But in actuality, the round is probably already ended. So, Billy, number one, is there a way around this? Is, signing up for Fight Pass or something going to eliminate that delay? Is there a way that we can get access to a better feed? And number two, how is it going to change your approach if we can't find a way to get more on time in terms of the feed? How's it going to change your approach with regard to live betting these fights?
Yeah, I don't have that answer yet. I watched it exclusively on Paramount Plus, but the prelims are on Fight Pass. So I think this week I'm going to have my TV on one and my laptop on the other just to see if there is a difference in the feed.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I think if you're not careful, you can fall a few seconds behind even the Paramount Plus stream, which is important to make sure you set yourself to live because it's not. I don't know how everyone's app experience is depending on the device you're using, but mine, if I like accidentally hit something on the remote, it would pause for a second. And, over the course of a 6 hour event, you might fall an extra 30 seconds behind, which is obviously meaningful. The other thing I've noticed, this isn't really a Paramount Plus specific, and you might have caught this too, is if fighter A wins round one and fighter B wins round two, even if it's pretty clear, usually they adjust pretty heavily to fighter B, like suggesting that they've got the momentum and stuff, almost irrespective of who the original favorite was. And I got a really good price on Sean O'Malley after round two last week. He had clearly won round one. He had pretty clearly lost round two. He was the pre-fight favorite, so like if a game is tied at halftime, the pregame favorite should still be the favorite. But he was like plus 250 or something I caught. So that is something to watch moving forward, unless it seems like the guy's really tired. And that's one where, the delay doesn't hurt you as bad as long as you're confident in your reads of who won the round. So that's the big one for me. And then my question for you, Sean, I don't know if you know this answer, if anyone does. Do the sportsbooks setting these live lines, do they all just have someone there in person, or do they have a separate feed than we do? Does the UFC provide non-delayed feeds to sports books? Because I wonder if we're all seeing the same delay, how they get ahead of it.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I'm not sure. It's something I'll poke around and ask around about. Something I did notice though on Saturday, particularly during the main event, and we're going to get increased audience, increased interest with these fights now being on Paramount Plus. A lot more casual bettors watching. People are joining these fights, watching these fights now, who do not know how the scoring works. They may think the fight is judged as a whole. If you look at enough commentary from people after the fight, after these fights are scored, legitimately casual fans who do not know how the fights are scored. They're just like, why did this guy lose? I thought he was, because they don't know fights are scored round by round. Whatever it is, there's just been this injection of casual interest, and it may not last for so long. It may have been for only the first one, but it may stick around. And I do think there is actually equity to be made between the time where the fight has ended and where the scorecards are being read if you think the fight has played out in a pretty clear manner. And if you were Armin Sarukian watching the fight last week, I don't know if you saw Armin's post-fight interview from Patty and Gaethje. He basically said Patty was knocked down 15 to 25 times, knocked out 15 to 25 times throughout the course of that fight. I mean, Gaethje just walking him down the not going to recap that full fight, but the way that fight was playing out, all of those exchanges were exchanges in other fights where you see a guy go out, and Patty was just unbelievable in terms of the durability. May have taken a career-changing, career-altering beating throughout the course of that fight. Definitely absorbed a lot of damage, but the point is, Gaethje was trading as though he was not 100% to win the fight after the fight had already ended, and I thought there was definitely some free money to be made after the fact.
To
3%
that point,
ROI,
real quick,
5% ROI when you already know the result. Go ahead, Billy.
oh, it might even not be that people are judging it incorrectly. They might just still have market orders
Mm-hmm.
left up that they forgot to close, and they don't automatically close right when the final bell goes off. They automatically close when the results are read. So there's probably some alpha there. It reminds me of a few years ago, you could bet on a president to win an election that had already been called.
Mm.
It was like minus 2,000, but like they literally already declared one of the candidates as the winner, and you could still bet on that guy well after that date, and get a free 4% ROI or whatever it worked out to. So similar situation. I think it might just be outstanding orders, not even people that are actively trading. They just don't realize that if they put a 7 cent Patty Pimblett buy, then it's still there until you manually cancel it or it's paid out.
100%. I think that's part of it as well, but definitely just something to keep an eye out for, especially with these increased interest on these numbered cards, these numbered UFC cards now no longer pay-per-views. But with that, we're going to get into the rematch between Alexander Volkanovski and Diego Lopes, the second bout between these two. It's a rematch from UFC 314 last year. Volkanovski, the pricing very similar to the first fight. Volkanovski was minus 150, Lopes plus 125 in the first fight. He's actually a shorter priced favorite now. He's about minus 135. Lopes about plus 115. I think that is a red flag for Volkanovski bettors. The fact that he looked so dominant in the first fight, basically won 24 of the 25 minutes in the first fight, got knocked down near the end of round two, which swung the round for two of the three judges on the scorecard in Lopes's favor. But Volkanovski won the round aside from that moment, popped up pretty quickly from that knockdown. And frankly, I had a lot more concerns about his durability going into that fight than I should coming into this fight. He's had more time to recover. He's further away from the bad knockout loss. He generally looked okay, absorbing damage in the first fight against Lopes. That said, I did think he was lingering in the pocket a little bit too long and taking shots that he normally would have been able to get out of the way of. And number two, Volkanovski has actively discussed being more aggressive for this fight, trying to go for a finish. I know we don't put a lot of stock into that, but considering the fact that his rematch with Max Holloway was the closest fight of that trilogy, his rematch with Islam Makhachev, he got knocked out in. I do tend to think there may be some truth to that Volkanovski does want to start a little bit more aggressively. And for Diego Lopes as well, he talked about not really having a game plan for the last fight. I wouldn't be surprised to see him come like a bat out of the hell in this one either. So I do think there's a chance that we kind of see the inverse from the first fight, which was very technical, very outside, Volkanovski very calculated. I think there's a chance these two may just rush at each other and somebody may fall relatively quickly. Now, I don't necessarily project a ton of value on either side of the money line or the total. I would lean to the under or the inside the distance at around minus 120. And I also do lean to Lopes pre-fight based on how I project it out, but I will be looking for Volkanovski live after that first round. After the second round is where I said the best price point would come in the first fight, and that is where the best price point came because it was 1-1 after he got dropped at the end of round two. So Volkanovski live anytime after round one. Maybe the end of round two is the best entry point for that. But the model does like a small edge on Lopes, considering the price adjustment is a major red flag against the favorite here after he dominated the first fight. The age continuing to grow as he gets into his late 30s now. So I think there's a chance Volkanovski gets knocked down early like he did in the first fight, and then you get a better price on him live here. Billy, you're going to lay the point spread minus 5.5 at plus 130. I think that's probably a good way to play it because you get the finish equity and the dominant decision equity baked in. I don't really see how Lopes makes it a more competitive 25-minute fight than the last time.
Right.
But certainly the knockout upside and the knockout into club and sub upside is still there. So how'd you land on that bet? Where do you like it up to? And any other thoughts or bets for this fight? Live betting thoughts as well.
Yeah, it's funny. We don't discuss these ahead of time most of the time. Occasionally we do, but you pretty much arrived at how I got there too. I originally went to say like, well, what's Volk decision only, right? Because if he loses, it's going to be because he gets knocked out. He's going to win most of the minutes. It's like minus 400 and change. So obviously not taking that. Just because I'm honestly at that point more worried about a Volk finish if we're laying minus 400. I had the immediate same reaction to the price being the same, and it's moved towards Lopes throughout the week. I don't know if that's necessarily sharp action or just people betting on the young guy, whatever.
I feel like that
They
happened for the last fight too, and then on fight day, Volkanovski took money and moved to a bigger favorite again. I could be wrong, but I feel like that happened. So
Yeah, that sounds right. So I'm not, depending on when you're listening to this, these numbers might be a little bit off. One thing that's interesting, we worry about Volk's age. Lopez turned pro in 2012 and has, what is it? Let me see real quick, and has 34 professional fights. Volk turned pro in 2012 and has 31 professional fights. Fight years, they're the same age, right? Like they have the same amount of miles, similar damage overall. I believe Lopez has two knockout losses. Volk has three knockout losses. One was a million years ago at like middleweight. So that doesn't really matter. I'm not worried about the age for that reason. I think as long as he doesn't get clipped with something and go down, Volk is going to dominate at least 4 rounds, which is more than enough to cover the minus 5.5. As I often talk about, the 5.5s in a 5 round fight are so much easier to cover than the 3.5 in a 3 round fight because you do have a little bit of room for error. You can lose 1 round on all three judges' scorecards, and two of the three can give another round to your opponent as long as you get or one of the three, I'm sorry. As long as you get, two 4-1 wins in there, that's +6 right there. Should be good. I'm with you on Volk Live. Should it come up, this is one of those where I don't think there's going to be an obvious enough option to outweigh the difficulty with the longer delays. So I'm probably not doing that myself. Unless there is something like the last fight where Lopez clips him in a pretty clear opportunity.
just to remark on the last fight, the line movement Thursday before the fight, which was on Saturday, Volkanovski was minus 130. He ended up closing at minus 155. So the later money did end up pouring in on the champion. On fight day, you could also assume some parlays and stuff he got tied into as well.
Yeah.
May have pushed the line in his direction too. Let's move on to our fight of the night between Dan Hooker and Benoit Saint Denis, Benoit Saint Denis, Saint Denis, depending on how you want to pronounce it, how much French you want to inject in the pronunciation. We both like BSD to finish here at around minus 130. I'm also interested in a sub prop at plus 165. And I think it's an alternative to the inside the distance prop. You could just bet the first half of the fight, a same game parlay with BSD in the under 1.5 rounds. Pays out at plus 175. He's 6 years younger. He has all the grappling upside in this fight. Hooker is the better distance striker, outlanding his opponents by 2/10 of a strike per minute. BSD getting outlanded by a tenth of a strike per minute. So not a huge difference in terms of the distance striking. I think Hooker's best chance here probably to land a knee or something as BSD is coming in for a shot. He has very vicious knees that he's landed before on guys trying to shoot takedowns. But otherwise, I think he's going to get absolutely mauled on the mat like he did by Arman Sarukian and probably ultimately submitted by BSD. So I make the ITD prop about minus 145 for the favorite. I make a sub prop plus 155. I'd bet them to minus 130 and plus 165 respectively. And I also like his money line as a parlay piece up to about minus 400 in addition to that SGP. Billy, as I said, taking that inside the distance at minus 130. His round one odds are really short. I would have expected maybe like a BSD round two, round three angle to pay out a little bit more than it does, but his round one and two odds are very short. We'll get to fighters later where that's also the case. So is there anything else that caught your eye here aside from the inside of the distance?
No, I just am surprised that his inside the distance is minus 130 when he's a minus 350 favorite and has literally finished 100% of his pro wins. Hooker usually gets finished in all of his losses. So, like, I don't understand why it's not a bigger percentage of his win equity. The note I made when I was breaking down this fight, and I have the full fight preview, might be up by the time you're hearing this. It reminds me a lot of Arnold Allen versus Gene Silva last week,
Mm.
except Hooker is way less durable than Arnold Allen. In fact, Arnold Allen also finished Hooker when they fought during Hooker's brief attempt to go down to 145, which was clearly not a good decision, but he's been finished a few times since then. I don't know if that was just the start of it or what. But yeah, it's a very similar fight, and then we have one hyper aggressive guy. We'll mix in the grappling. Obviously, BSD more of a grappler than Gene Silva. Probably will not surfboard him at the end of the third round. Hope he does, that'd be cool. But yeah, yeah, I like BSD to finish a hooker fast. He's known for doing that. If you know one thing about Benoit Saint Denis, he likes to finish fast, and Hooker is a guy who can be finished. Also, on that note, since I'm somewhat making a joke towards the last name here, did you catch that Paramount Plus's Italian service auto-translated Hooker's last name to prostituta on the service? Because the auto-translate came through. It might have been Photoshop, but it's going around MMA Twitter right now that if you go to the Italian language, which shout out to Paramount Plus for having all the various languages available, but they referred to him as Dan Prostituta.
That's incredible. Needs to make that his nickname, Dan the Prostituta Ferguson, or Dan the Hangman Prostituta Hooker. That would just got to find a way
Might
to
as
work
well
that
lean
in.
into it at this point. Yeah, he's probably
Absolutely.
heard it all as a 35-year-old man with the last name Hooker.
I've got a elite nickname coming down the line that I'd like to propose for a fighter. We'll get to that fight in a moment. We've got a bunch of underdogs on this card. We're gonna save a couple of those that we like though for the end because Billy and I are on opposite sides of a couple of fights. So we'll break those down near the end alongside our best bets. We're gonna stick with the main card for now and Tai Tuivasa against Taliesin Teixeira. Tai comes in on a 5-fight losing streak here. He also got really big within the past year. He looked like he was done fighting. That's how overweight he looked in the photo. I was legitimately concerned we were not going to see him again. He is back in shape. Who knows what kind of toll that took, on his gas tank. Not like he ever had a great gas tank to begin with, but Teixeira got KO'd by Derek Lewis in July in 35 seconds. He just doesn't look like a guy who reacts well to clean strikes. We know what Tuivasa is going to do early on in this fight, unless he gets taken down immediately. He's going to find ways to land on the chin of Teixeira. We'll see if Teixeira is able to withstand them. I do make Tybura about plus 190 in this fight. I make his KO prop about plus 250. So you can get him at plus 275. You can get the KO prop at plus 350. I like all those. I also like his KO1 prop at plus 600. And then maybe even, I didn't take a look at it, but Tybura in an under half a round prop as well probably pays out pretty nicely too. Maybe 8 to 1, 9 to 1. So Tybura early into it to
Tuivasa.
share a live angle, I think could be a good way to go about this one. But I'm looking for violence here with the underdogs. Leaving Tai Tuivasa
There we
at
go.
plus 275. Billy, any thoughts or bets for you on this matchup?
Yeah, I love that. I was just worried I was betting with my heart. Tai Tuivasa is a less athletic Derek Lewis, and we saw what Derek Lewis did. Crucially, less athletic, but like at least this version of Derek Lewis, way more heart, way more toughness. Like Tai Tuivasa will wade through the fire, eat a bunch of shots. We saw him against Cyril Gahn. Like thought he was gonna catch Gahn there for a minute, which would have been awesome. Gahn could not get him out of there with shots to the head. Finally resorted to shots to the body. And yeah, if he can hang around for a few minutes, all he's got to land is one, dink him and sink him, as they say. My real hope for this fight, though, is Paramount Plus does not run an ad for some silly movie over Tuivasa's walkout because he has the best walkouts. He always comes out to, Barbie Girl or Cyndi Lauper or whatever. We got to have that. That's like the best part of the Tai Tuivasa experience, especially over the last 5 fights. Please, Paramount executives, I know you're listening to this show as you do every week. Just run all. I don't care how many ads you run during the main event. Just give us Tuivasa's walkout.
Yeah, you're gonna have like Ghostface trailing behind him after he walks out winning too, taking beers out of shoeies. I don't know if you saw Ghostface from Scream trailing Waldo Cortez Acosta back to
Yeah,
the locker room, and everybody's like, "What is that about?" Listen, if Ghostface is gonna be doing shoeies alongside Tuivasa, I'm all for that. So, little promotional ideas if you want to promote Scream. I'm not sure if they're trying to use shoeies as a way to promote that movie, but underdog that we do have consensus agreement on this weekend, Kaichiro Nakamura against Sebastian Cesali. This is one of the 3 Road to UFC final fights. They will be the first 3 fights on the card. Unfortunately, one of the 4, the flyweight bout involving Aaron Tao, did get canceled. But this is the featherweight final between Kaichiro Nakamura, Sebastian Cesali. This is expected to probably be the best of these 3 fights. I projected this one about minus 125 to go to a decision. I believe you can get even money. I do expect it to be competitive, but I do like Nakamura at plus money. As does Billy, 4 inches taller, 4-inch reach advantage, 4 years younger. He's a bit more calculated. Cesali is a bit more active, but I do prefer Nakamura's power and think he could get the lean from the judges by landing the more impactful shots. So give me the underdog and the goes to decision between Nakamura and Cesali, both at plus money. Billy, how do you feel about the total And I know you're with me on the dog. Where do you like him down to?
Yeah, I've got so for anyone out there who hasn't seen it, I have a full breakdown of the four that were fights and now the three that remain out there. So I'm not going to dive too deep into the stylistic stuff, but Cesale was a national karate champion for a long time, switched to MMA kind of late. Nakamura has a style that looks karate inspired, but I couldn't find any information saying that's actually what he does. But definitely throws the harder shots. Cesale coming in off a knockout, but it was kind of fluky, and 7 of his 10 wins are decisions. So I think that was more a reflection of his opponent, where Nakamura is going to be throwing the harder shots, and that often can sway the judges. Lean a little bit to Cesale and overs or Nakamura's and unders. I think Nakamura has more finish equity here, but those prices are a little bit skewed just because Cesale came in off a knockout. Nakamura's last win in the tournament, I believe, was a decision, and I've looked at so many of these guys, so I'm getting a little mixed up here. Yeah, his last one was a decision, but before that was a knockout, so I think there's just some recency bias at play here. Also, no blood relation to Rinya Nakamura, now UFC fighter, but they train together, which I found interesting. I thought it might be his younger brother or something, but none of that. Completely different style. He's been working his grappling defense with the elite wrestling of Rinya and is more of a striker himself. I agree with you that this is the best remaining fight. I think the fight that I was most looking forward to is unfortunately the one that got canceled.
Yeah, we're big fans of Aaron Tao on the show. We bet both him and Street Buddha in the semifinals. I will be against Street Buddha. A little teaser for the end of this episode. Billy will be back on Street Buddha, but did want to remark on Nakamura. He actually beat Kai Wen, who the
Mm.
UFC was trying to push, to the final, trying to get him a UFC contract, beat him in enemy territory in the last fight, basically dominated that decision against a very partisan crowd against them. The crowds in Shanghai were so elite for those semifinal fights. The Aussies really have a lot to live up to in terms of the first three fights on this card. Hopefully starting this card at a little bit more reasonable time for the Aussies. I mean, it's still going to be midnight or 1 a.m. when this thing gets going down there, local time. But hopefully they get a good crowd for these Road to UFC finals, because the semifinal and quarterfinal fights, the crowds were just so elite. The bantamweight final between Lawrence Louis and, prepare for this nickname, Sulan Let Me Grangbo. Love that one, right, Billy?
Okay.
Suspicious betting activity on this one, though. Need to note, Louis went from minus 190 as a favorite to now plus 210. Sulan Grangbo went from plus 160 to now minus 260. I've seen some mentions of this one, the line movement, because it's so drastic in the same breath as the Hernandez fight as last week. I have not seen any indication that this one, is actually suspicious, but the line movement has been dramatic. So it's just worth keeping an eye on this fight in general. Sulan Grangbo is very interesting. He's another Enbo trained fighter, like Sumaderji. He's been training since he was a child. He's also 9 years younger than Lee, just 21 years old. Lee, much more well rounded. He's the more technical fighter. I think this is a technique versus athleticism, power, aggression type of fight. I do lean to the favorite, but I know you like the dog. I think of the bets here, I prefer the over that goes to decision. You can get as high as plus 160 on this fight to go all 15 minutes. I make that closer to plus 120. So, thoughts on the over in this fight, Billy, as well? Who that would benefit if it did go all 15 minutes? I would imagine Louis, and then why you land, or Lee, and then why you landed on him and where you like him to.
Yeah, I actually was fairly confident that this was the fight you were going to suggest an alternate nickname for, but I would have got the fighter wrong. I thought it was going to be Lawrence Louis Louis. Like you put the nickname after, which is usually not done, but I thought you're going to have some version of that, is where I thought this was going. So I was pleasantly surprised to hear what you said
Louis
about that.
Louis, that's definitely it'd be a good walkout song for him as well.
Yeah,
But
that was
certainly the
going to be
nickname could be
my next
incorporated.
thought on that. I saw the line movement. I have been treating this as if there is no reason to be concerned,
Mm-hmm.
which could be entirely wrong. But from a technical standpoint, he shouldn't be this big of an underdog. In Sulan Grangbo's last fight, Michael Chiesa said the way to disrupt his timing would be to throw a lot of feints and mix in takedowns, whether you're actually going for takedowns or just mixing them in. Louis is from City Kickboxing, so a lot of feints, and he's constantly mixing in takedown threats. It was like literally exactly what Michael Chiesa said would be the recipe to being Sulan Grangbo. Does not have the physical tools of the younger man, but just has the perfect style to disrupt what he's trying to do. Sulan Grangbo, very aggressive, fast hands. He kind of needs to set his feet and get flowing with the hands to be dangerous. And you can't do that if you're getting feinted at and moved around and defending takedowns, which is what Louis will do. To your question, obviously, I think the over pretty clearly benefits Louis. Whereas if it goes under, it's probably because Louis gets knocked out fast by a guy with fast hands and big power. But I trust the City Kickboxing system and game planning. I also think to the point of the line movement, these are smaller markets generally. Like the lines came up late at a lot of domestic books, not as many people betting into them. It wouldn't be that hard for two or three guys with a strong opinion on one side to sway it, where something like a fight between established veterans that's where the line has been up for over a month, like we saw last week, is a little bit harder to see being moved without a ton of action. So that's part of the reason I'm just ignoring that element here. I could be dead wrong. The guy could come in on a broken leg or whatever. But if we're pretending this fight is on the up and up, I think plus 220 on Louis is crazy.
Sulang just met me, Grangbo. Every time I read his name last night, I was like, I couldn't get it out of my head, and it's will be how I will refer to him for the rest of his career, whether or not it is this one fight or whether he ends up making it as a UFC fighter and is in the promotion for a long time. But yeah, the Julian Lane just could not get out of my head with this dude. If you're on Twitter, we have a great new feature. If you see a bet from any of your favorite action experts or anyone on gambling Twitter, you now tag at Playbook and tell our bot to build the bet slip at a book of your choice. It will build it out for you with a quick slip link that opens right up to your sports book. So keep an eye out for a new tool at Playbook on Twitter. Let's move to our favorite props for this card. We're going to start off with the banger between Rafael Fiziev. I always call him Rafael. I think it's Rafael. I get the Brazilian in my head. I see the Rafael. I want to go with the Rafael. I just go for it. I think it's wrong in this instance, but going against Mauricio Hoofy, that one is correct. Fiziev very public this week. 61% across my data samples, despite being the actual underdog. As a result, my model makes Hoofy about 58%. Hoofy is the bigger man, 3 inches taller, 4 inch reach advantage, also 3 years younger, and most importantly, left fighting nerds to go train with Volkanovski in City Kickboxing before this camp. Very interesting. See if he comes out with a bit of a different game plan because he was always kind of overly calculated, a little bit too patient in terms of his style. Now, we have seen his cardio fall off in the third round, so perhaps that was born as a result of him knowing he didn't have the ability to sustain for 15 minutes. But with that reach advantage, I'd really like to see more of a jab from him. Training with Volk, like to see more of a jab from him, a little bit more feints this weekend. Fiziev, the better striker, more efficient by the numbers. The better grappler, 45% versus 13% in terms of control rate as well. I don't really see him having a lot of success getting takedowns here. I know he took down Gaethje, took down Bahamondes. Hoofy does have pretty good first layer takedown defense. Once you get him down, I think you're a little bit more able to keep him down. But I don't ultimately see Fiziev having a ton of success grappling here. Also thought, he's just kind of looked slower since coming back against Gaethje, against Bahamondes. Needed to go to the grappling against Bahamondes because the speed isn't necessarily there anymore. So I do lean both to Hoofy, but also for this fight to go to a decision. I make the favorite about minus 135. I bet him up to, or I'd bet Hoofy up to about minus 125, and I would also bet that he goes to decision to about minus 150. And then you can maybe look for a live angle as well, depending on body language here. I would lean more towards Fiziev in the live market, but definitely keep an eye on Hoofy's activity, especially early. Billy, do you have any sort of definitive take on this fight, or is this one a pass for you?
No, I'm definitely betting Hoofy in this one. It was actually the first bet I made this year. I had a free
Mm.
bet and was looking for some plus money, and Hoofy was like plus 120 at one point. He was in my luck ratings as a pick. Funny that you call him Rafael. I was on No Bets Barred with the big homie Jed Meshew this week. Did the exact same thing. And also that he's Hoofy is hilarious because it's not his last name. His last name is Santos. He really likes the character Monkey D. Luffy from One Piece, has adopted that as a last name.
Mm.
In Brazil, they transliterate Luffy from the Japanese to Rufy because a lot of Asian languages don't have the L. And then because he's translating it to Portuguese, the Rufy has become Hoofy. So originally Luffy, became roofie, now hoofy, which is hilarious. Cardio should be better without all the secondhand smoke from Carlos Praches, so that will be a big big update to going to Australia. I think cigarettes are like $40 a pack there too, so should have some good clean air. And yeah, I liked the price I got. I'm not in love with Hoofy at -118, but love the plus money. That's all I got there.
Yeah, it's tough when your coworkers like on a Wednesday are like, "Hey, we should go out tonight." Like Hoofy doesn't have that, that negative influence in his life at the moment. So maybe a little bit more focused. Doesn't have Carlos Prates trying to party 5 nights of the week.
Just
Uh,
barbecuing with Volk and his 7 kids or whatever in the
Yeah,
backyard.
maybe the food. He's getting a little bit more protein, but maybe not eating as healthy. A lot of beers with folks. So lifestyle changes for Mauricio Hoofy, which also could go by Luffy. Great breakdown on the nickname or the name by Billy there. I had no idea. The origin was One Piece. That's pretty cool. And then you get the translation with the R. Very interesting. Another great nickname too, Billy Elicana, son of Susie. Billy, son of Susie Elicana, going against Junior Tafa, light heavyweight bout. This is the less scary Tafa, in my opinion. This is the leaner, longer, lankier Tafa. Does not possess as much one shot, kill shot power. Still has power, not as much as his brother, though. Now, Elikana probably wins this fight via grappling. The question is how quickly he's able to get there. Tafa does a pretty good first layer takedown defense, like I said with Hoofy, but he is an absolute fish once you put him
Yeah.
on his back. And Hoofy able to get up at least a little bit. Tafa will remain there for the remainder of the round. So one takedown in each round could be the round, if not the end of the fight, in Elikana's favor. I think the best way to maybe play this is Elikana's late props. And Billy had Elikana round 2 in the sheet before I even got there. I wouldn't want to miss out on an Elikana round 3 because I got a little, light just taking the round 2, but I might allocate like enough to the round 3 just to break even or make a little bit in the event that he wins in round 3. I'm with Billy much more focused on the round 2. I think that is probably the sweet spot for this fight, in addition to a live angle as well, provided he gets knocked down in round 1, recovers, and then you have him going into round 2. Down a round, you might get a nice square price on Son of Susie, Billy Elikana. So 2-inch reach advantage here. Don't expect him to spend a ton of time striking, though. The grappling looks like it's the easiest path to victory. Round 2 as high as plus 440. Round 3 as high as plus 650. How do you think he gets it done, Billy? Knockout or submission?
Uh, I think it happens on the ground. I'm not confident where on the ground because once you get a Tafa on the ground, really either Tafa, that's kind of it. There's always the concern that you end up fighting a different Tafa than the one you were originally booked against. Less of a concern now that one of them is a heavyweight, but like it, stranger things have happened. We could see a catchweight against the other Tafa if someone gets hurt warming up or whatever, because that has literally happened. Um, Junior Tafa, his last 4 fights, he's been finished 3 times, twice in the second round, once with 4 seconds left in the first round. He has roughly 5 minutes of cardio, so if you just don't die during that time period, you'd be all right. And now at 205, he looks slightly better overall, but the power just has not traveled down with him. So if Alicana can survive that, again, great call out on the live. Just really at the end of round 1, no matter what happened, if you can get some live angles on Billy Alicana, price better, price worse, I don't really care. That's also there. But yeah, I think round 2 is the hot round here, just based on how Junior and to an extent his brothers, should he be the one who ends up fighting, fight goes. I'm being a little facetious here, but like this has happened at least twice where like between the time we would record the podcast and the fight, they've swapped Tafas.
I'm thinking of the George Bush meme, like a third Tafa brother has emerged. Like we're just gonna we're gonna find one day. They're gonna clone one. Something's gonna happen. We're gonna get a flyweight Tafa. I need it. Uh, the battle giraffe Cam Rouston against Cody Brundage. Rouston 3 inches taller, 6-inch reach advantage. We know the deal with Brundage. Typically finds a way out after it starts going south after round 1. He could have some grappling upside here, though, especially early. He is clearly the better wrestler. Rouston taken down 10 times on Contender Series by Torres Finney, who we'll get to in a minute. Did get up every time from those takedowns. Basically spent about 30 to 45 seconds on the mat, 15 seconds on the cage, and then got taken down again. But against Brundage here, Rouston is favored to win in round 1, and I do like him to get this done relatively quickly. KO is plus 175. I think there's just too much equity in his submission prop. I know when Brundage looks for a way out, it does tend to be from the grappling. I see him going on his back and flopping and Rouston like separating and landing ground and pound rather than going into the guard and playing grappling with Brundage. So Rouston, I make his KO prop plus 122. You can get as high as plus 175. And then a same game parlay, Rouston and the other 1.5 rounds is plus 120. I may just prefer the KO prop among those. His round one prop, as I said, though, is plus 180. Round two is plus 300. So normally we're looking for the live and late angles against Brundage. The value just is not there at plus 300 in round two after being plus 180 in round one. I'm not messing around where price is that short. I think KO plus 175 by far the most appealing of the four numbers I just gave out. So Billy Rouston against Brundage, another potential live angle. Assuming Brundage has early grappling success, you come back in on Rouston live after round one. I'm sure that plus 200, plus 300 round two is a bit short for you as well. Do you like the KO prop, or is there anything else you're looking at?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm having a hard time with this one. I don't like betting Cody Brundage fights because he has like three or four not losses on there that probably should have been losses.
Mm-hmm.
Although one of them was paid out as a loss at the time, and they don't go back and take your money if it gets overruled a no contest. So we have that going for us. But yeah, the point you made, you can't get taken down 10 times in a fight if you don't get back to your feet at least seven by definition. So like that for him, I don't think Cody Brundage has the I don't know, like stick-to-itiveness to take you down 10 times. If the first few don't work, he's
Mm-hmm.
probably going to just try to throw some bombs like he did with Julian Marquez. And it worked on Marquez, but it's not going to against Cam Rouston. So love Rouston for DFS. I've written about him a ton there. That will be where most of my exposure is.
The captain, Jonathan McAuliffe, against the Welsh gangster, Oban Elliott. I think we may have a market overcorrection here. McAuliffe is plus 165 against Kevin Doucette. He ended up winning that fight. Oban Elliott was minus 600 against Coe, ended up losing that fight. And now McAuliffe coming in here as a favorite. He does have a 5-inch reach advantage. He is the better athlete, but he is pretty limited in terms of his techniques, just the straight left, throws a body kick. He's not uber dynamic on the feet. I do think Oban has the grappling upside, but expect McAuliffe to keep this on the feet. Oban, though, the problem and why I'm on McAuliffe here, despite not being super enthusiastic about it, Oban is an extremely public underdog this week. 60% of the predictions are backing him. As a result, my model makes McAuliffe around 60%. It ends up flipping it. So I would bet McAuliffe up to around minus 140. Would not be a particularly big bet for me. I may prefer the goes to decision here. That's around minus 180. I projected that closer to minus 220. And then McAuliffe decision is obviously the angle that aligns with both of those. He's around plus 195 to win by decision. So McAuliffe minus 140, the price target, goes to decision minus 200, the price target. And then McAuliffe decision, either a round robin piece or a straight bet down to about plus 150. Billy, any of those three bets you like? McAuliffe money line goes to decision or McAuliffe decision?
I like the go to decision there, partially because I lean Oban, and I think Oban and over some version of that is probably correct. I'm with you on the market correction. It really comes down to how good you think Seokhyun Kim is, the Korean Tyson, which is a hilarious nickname for a guy who just shot like 50 takedowns on Oban Elliott when your nickname references Mike Tyson. I think it's because he actually looks like an Asian version of Mike Tyson more than his fighting style. I don't that doesn't seem like a thing that could be true until you look at him, but it somehow is. Yeah, so I lean towards Oban. It'll be another like has some DFS exposure. I like the goes to a decision. I think Seokhyun Kim is very, very good, and I will be willing Seokhyun Ko, I'm sorry, and will be willing to forgive Oban for the loss there just because that's how highly I view his opponent. But I could be wrong, and it could be that Oban's just not that great because his wins are Preston Parsons, Val Woodburn, Basil Hafez, you know.
Yiza against Genghis Khan Ofli, featherweight bout. Yiza is the better athlete, 5-inch reach advantage, has more power. I think he's the better wrestler of the pair as well. It's a pretty good gas tank too for a guy who's willing to wrestle as much as he does. Ofli is just a bit more refined, more technical. He's also the hometown fighter. I meant to talk about this in the Volkanovski breakdown. I don't really have a way to measure or factor in home field advantage yet. There is something there. Look at the Sean O'Malley fight last week. There was no way O'Malley was ever losing a close decision.
Mhm.
Song basically had to put a stamp on it at the end of round one and didn't. He landed some nice shots at the end of round one. Some people scored round one for him, but he did not get it on any of the three scorecards. And then Sean definitively won round three. Song definitively won round two, but round one was the toss up. You put that fight in a neutral place. You put that fight in Abu Dhabi. Maybe it goes the other way. Maybe Song gets one of the three cards. But with that said, there needs to be an adjustment I put in for close decision, probably going to the hometown guy, whether it's 2%, 3%, what have you. That's basically the edge that I show on the main event right now is like a 2-3% edge for Lopez. If you take that away for, home field, the fact that Volkanovski didn't have to travel, something to that effect. I think the flight probably the biggest factor, especially when these guys are going to Australia and it's a bit further of a flight. But all of that said, I haven't factored in a home field advantage adjustment or anything for Con Hopefully. I do show value on Yiza. I did bet against Yiza in his last fight with Weston Wilson. May seem dumb. I thought Wilson could neutralize Yiza's wrestling. And Yiza had never knocked anybody out, I believe, previously. Hopefully, I think he's the lesser wrestler here. I think Yiza is going to find a way to get him down, potentially get the back. We've seen Ofli, when he gets taken down, get held down by Muhammad Naimov for the majority of that fight. So, Yiza to win. His money line up pretty steep. I actually prefer his inside the distance odds at around plus 275. I make that closer to plus 175. And then I like the fight to end by finish as well. I make that about plus 110. And you can get as high as plus 145. So Za inside the distance at plus 275 and the fight to end inside the distance at plus 145, but also show value on Yiza's money line as well. Billy, Con Hopefully against Yiza. Any thoughts or bets for you on this one?
Yeah, I like the Yiza finish angle. To your point on the like home field though, I think the like East Asian fighters, it's not as bad here
Mm-hmm.
because it's a similar time zone. It's not a huge travel time. Like that's going to affect a dude flying from Brazil or North America or whatever a
Yeah,
lot more.
Lopez flying from Mexico. Yeah.
So I'm not as worried when it's like Asian fighter versus Australian fighter, and there is like a lot of support for those guys too, traditionally in Australia. Not when they're fighting an Australian, but you look at a fight we talked about earlier, Tai Tuivasa versus a dude coming from Brazil. I think that's pretty significant.
Hmm.
Not that one's going to a decision by any stretch, but like even just in terms of energy levels and travel time and all those disruptions. I'm not sure how much it matters when they're coming from China, which is, I don't know, like a 4 or 5 hour flight. I could be way off on that. I've never flown from China to Australia, but I think it's much less than it is from Brazil, I guess is the big point there.
Move on to our best bets. Billy and I are actually on opposite sides of one another on these particular fights. I'm curious to hear the debate and the breakdowns. Going to start with mine. That's Jacob Malkoun going against Torres Finney, who I just mentioned about taking down Cam Rouston 10 times. Both Malkoun and Torres Finney, elite control grapplers. Torres has controlled 98% of his cage time of the UFC, 90% for Malkoun, and that includes a fight where he went against Brandon Allen. Finney attempts, wait for this, 58 takedowns per 5 minutes at distance. Insane. 14.2 for Malkoun, which is basically on par with like Marab in terms of the takedown rate. 14 per 5 minutes is insane. Now, obviously, the more times you allow your opponent up, the more, if you're going to keep chain wrestling, the more attempts you're going to have per 5 minutes of distance. You would rather have a lower attempts per 5 minutes and a higher control rate. But as I said, both have elite control rates as well. So basically, I'm not sure who's going to win the wrestling here. I think it's going to be competitive. I think Torres may get more control in the fight, but I do not expect Malkoun to get held down. I think he will scramble. I think he'll get on a single leg, and I think he's going to look to separate and get back to striking range where he is definitively the more technical and superior striker, outlanding opponents by nearly a full strike per minute in distance compared to minus 2.7 for Torres Finney. Finney's going to get outclassed at range here. The question is how much time he's able to spend, or he's forced to spend at range because he's mostly just trying to cling on to his opponents. I also think, to Torres Finney's point, or to Torres Finney's credit, I think he's the more durable of the two fighters. I think he probably has more power of these two fighters, but I do think Malkoun is just much more refined in the striking. Did not factor in home field here either, but also you have the crowd in a close fight giving the guy support who is actually landing damage and landing punches as opposed to the guy who's pushing him up against the fence. The UFC does not like Torres Finney. He basically forced his way onto the roster because the fans want him to be there, or, just supported his journey and his physique in this division. Malkoon's not a particularly big guy either. The athleticism here is, definitely much more matched than other guys he could be fighting at middleweight. But stylistically, I do not think this is a good matchup for him because Malkoon can anti-grapple, and he is clearly the better striker. I make him around minus 220. He's listed at minus 150. I bet him up to minus 200, but I also like the goes to decisions here as well. I also make that around minus 200 and would bet that up to minus 185. I'll probably have a bigger bet on Malkoon than I do on the ITD or than I do on the GTD, but I do like both of those wagers. Billy, I know you like Torres Finney in this matchup. Where's your price target on him? And how do you see this one playing out in terms of the decision prop that I mentioned? Do you like this one to go all 15 minutes as well?
Yeah, so this was another one for my luck rating. So I got plus 150 on Finney. I still like the plus 130. Wouldn't go much past that. Basically, this is either going to be like a fairly high level wrestling match or a pretty crappy boxing match, depending on how this goes. Finney is just a much better athlete. He played D1 football and wrestled, where Malkoon is a better, I think, like submission grappler or jujitsu player, but doesn't have the wrestling or the athleticism that Finney has. So in theory, Finney should be able to get some takedowns or at least shove him into the fence and hold him there long enough to get some, kind of BS control time. If this is striking, like Malkoon is better, I'm 100% with you, but he's not good. Like your plan A for Malkoon is never to be in a striking match. It could be a situation where Finney actually tries to keep it standing because he's worried about getting submitted and just throws heavier shots. Torres, Finney, if you're listening, don't do this. Don't cave into fan pressure to have a fun fight, at least not yet. You have, I believe, a 4-fight contract. They cannot cut you after a win. So your best path to staying safe and employed here is a win, not trying to go for fight of the night. It won't work. It just doesn't work. It's not going to work the way you think it does if you try to do that. So yeah, lean Finney. Loved him at plus 150 because I could see a crappy striking match kind of going either way. Lean towards Malkoon there, but not at that price. Plus 130, sure. I wouldn't be like excited to bet it anymore, though, if that makes sense.
Final fight we're going to fully break down. That's Songwook Kim, the Frogman, going against Street Buddha, Dom Marfan. Elite nicknames on both sides of this matchup. This is the lightweight road to UFC final. Now, Billy and I both bet Fan on the road to UFC semis. He's very control time oriented. My fault with him earlier. The reason why I'm against him here, I just don't trust him to land enough damage to separate himself on the scorecards. Has the ability to just dominate the fight on the ground. He's also 7 years younger. So if anybody's going to be making improvements from one fight to the next, it is certainly Dom Marfan is probably the better overall prospect. Maybe in a few years, he beats Songwoo Kim pretty consistently once he's his game, fully like developed where he's at his apex level. I think Kim though is just the slightly more developed prospect at this stage of their careers. I make this fight right around a pick 'em. I have Kim around plus 120, or I make him plus 110. He was plus 160 last night. The line has moved in. So if you want a better price on Fan, you can get it right now than what you got yesterday. Billy, where I'm most curious to see your analysis here, and I know you like Fan in this fight, but where do you like him to? And how are you handling this fight live after round one? If Fan gets takedowns, but it looks like Kim is able to scramble up for them, or he's not getting held down too long. Are you maybe considering flipping sides after round one? How do you see this one playing out? And then how would you attack it live as well?
Yeah, not a huge live betting spot for me. I don't see either guy as really being cardio liabilities
Mm-hmm.
necessarily. Like they've both been pretty solid, both had some decisions on their road to UFC journeys that I mean, Kim lost his decision, but like was fine. He didn't fade at the end there. The big thing for me is that Kim is usually willing to engage in the grappling. In his two fights this season, he fought Rongju in season two. He got 3 takedowns in one of them, and he was taken down 3 times in the other. Both he came back to win. Fan is not a guy you want to do that with. If you go back, and this is a fun game for anyone who does jujitsu, and score Dammar Fan's last fights by IBJJF rules rather than MMA rules, he wins like 1 million to nothing in both of them. Because if you try to take him down, he's going to get a reversal right away. He dominates positions, he passes guard really well. My like where I'm going out on a limb here is hoping that someone told him you actually have to punch when you're in top position in MMA fights because you don't get jiu-jitsu points. Like that's not how we're scoring it like an IBJJF match. And he trains what gym is it in? It's like called Compton Training Center with Tom Nolan, I believe, UFC lightweight. So he's got some good guys out there. Just 25. I'm just hoping someone's in his ear like, "Hey man, you'd win these fights 30 to 25 if you punched him even a little bit on the ground because he is extremely dominant with the control." What's interesting from a technical standpoint, 75-inch reach, pretty good for lightweight, especially at 5'11. And most of his takedowns come from the clinch. But because his reach is so long, opponents want to get inside of that reach, which gives him the clinch and gives him the takedowns that he's elite at. Also interesting, he's 8-2. Both of his pro losses are to Quillen Salkild, also on this card. Quillen Salkild, I believe, the only lightweight he's fought with a 75-inch or longer reach. So that didn't apply against Salkild because Salkild didn't need to cut that distance, didn't give Fan easy takedowns, and Salkild finished him twice. Also, Salkild is very good, which is why he's like minus 1,500 against Jamie Malarkey, as we're going to talk about in a second. So I like it stylistically for Fan until they give him someone who can match him with that reach or has like really high level speed and footwork where he can get in and out of the pocket, which I don't see from Kim, who has got good power, but he's not going to avoid those clinch situations the way that he should.
Yeah, really good breakdown by Billy there. As I said, I just and as Billy pointed out, Fan just needs to be more active when he gets to
Yeah,
dominant
it's a
positions.
problem, and I'm stretching a little bit, banking on him to do something he's almost never done before, which you never like, but now's the time. Like you've had a long training camp, you know what the situation is. Please do it now.
7 years younger. That's why I had it at that point. He's still not done developing as a fighter. You mentioned killing Sal killed. He's minus 950 to minus 1,000 or higher against Jamie Malarkey here. This is the last fight we did not talk about on today's card. Now, my model, the value leans to either Sal killed by decision or fight goes to decision, but considering Jamie Malarkey's on short notice, has a very compromised chin, and also has severe scar tissue on his brow and his forehead that the moment Salkild starts punching it is just going to explode. I can't bet this fight to go longer or go to a decision here because I think a doctor stoppage is actually highly likely. Give me Salkild round two, round three. I don't think the prices are pretty good. I'm just going in terms of a pick here. I like Salkild to put on a fairly sustained beating. Maybe he gets taken down early and ends up having to scramble up because Malarkey can wrestle, but I think Salkild ends up finishing this one in round two. Billy, any bets for you here? Any thoughts for you on this fight? I know it's a steep line and there's not very much bettable. Maybe some DFS thoughts?
Yeah, that's love Salkeld for DFS. He's super expensive. I want to say 9,700 on DraftKings, as is befitting his price tag. I think, as evidenced by all the underdogs we talked about, there's enough value on this slate where you can get to him fairly easily, but a lot of people are going to balk at that 9,700 price tag, which makes him a good option. In my DFS breakdown at Fantasy Labs, which should be up by the time you're hearing this, I said Quillen Salka is really good at knocking people out, and Jamie Malarkey is really good at getting knocked out. So this is a matchup that tends to lead to a stoppage for Salkild. And when he's not getting stoppages, like the fights where he hasn't knocked someone out, Salkild wrestles a ton. Like he has between Contender Series and UFC, he has 4 fights. 2 of them he won by knockout. The other 2 he got 17 takedowns combined, 8 and 1, 9 in the other. So he's going to put up a ton of points one way or the other in DraftKings. So great DFS play.
Do you happen to remember if Volkanovski was in the optimal lineup last time he fought Lopes?
I believe he was because his price tag was low enough. And
Yeah.
Volkanovski, I don't remember what the stat exactly was, so I might get this wrong. But I think like all of his 5 round wins, he's put up at least 110 or 115 DraftKings points.
Mhm.
Like when he wins a 5 round fight, he just does so many things,
He
which
lands 150 plus strikes. Yeah, he
yeah.
landed 8 takedown, had a minute of control time.
Yeah, he's just doing a lot all the time. It reminds me of like a prime Kamaru Usman, who we said the same thing about. Like the fights weren't the most exciting and that he was hunting a finish, but when you added up the stats at the end, you're like, wow, he did many things here.
Yeah, I think the most important point is actually the fact that the line is relatively close, and as a result, his pricing can't be too egregious. So that probably keeps him affordable. Any other main DFS plays you like for this weekend before we sign off?
I really like if you can get to him, Cam Rouston as well.
Hmm.
Obviously, you can't. I'm going to tell you all these guys. You obviously can't play all the heavy favorites. Tuivasa, as you pointed out, if he gets the
Hmm.
win, it's almost guaranteed optimal lineup. And then my big DFS advice generally, and this made more sense when there was 4 of these fights, but just go heavy on the road to UFC. Like people don't
Hmm.
know who these guys are.
Hmm.
2 of the 3 remaining are favored to end inside the distance. The other is the fan fight that probably going to have a ton of takedowns either way. Kind of like you used to always point out about female fighters going under-owned relative to their value. It's the same thing. Just the casual dude who's making a lineup at noon on Saturday is not going to be clicking Dom Marfan or Sebastian Sisley or any of these people where it's just going to be structurally an advantage to have more of them.
Yeah, and there's no women's fights on this card, so that is
Right.
basically your substitute in terms of the less popular, less recognized fighters. But that'll do it for our UFC betting preview. You can find more UFC betting content from both Billy and myself on actionnetwork.com. If you'd like to instantly tell us some of the bets that we discussed on today's show, look for the quick slip link both in the podcast and video description, or visit actionnetwork.com/bet now. Don't forget to download the free award-winning Action Network app and sign up for Action Pro for immediate access to expert picks and analysis. Best of luck with all your bets this weekend. Enjoy the violence. Thank you for listening. We'll see you back here before Super Bowl Sunday next week for yet another UFC card.